Welcome to the Deconstructing Data live stream and podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. What's up, David? Anything new?
Hey, Jesse. I don't know. All's good here. How about you?
Oh, not a lot. I tried out Bordy per your suggestion, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. For those of you that haven't tried out Bordy yet, give it a try. We're gonna have Bordy on our podcast soon too, so that'll be fun.
And for those who've never heard of it, I believe is it Bordy.ai? So they can go to
I don't even know. Just look it up on LinkedIn and just look up Bordy, and you'll find it.
It'll ask you to send a DM. It's really interesting. But anyway, I digress. Let's go ahead and get into this episode because we have a really great guest. We'll be getting into TV again, and it's been a while. But today on Deconstructing Data, we're thrilled to welcome Justin Rosen. He's the SVP of Data Analytics from Ampersand to the show. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
It's going well, Justin. We really appreciate you joining us on the show today. We're going to let you kick it off and introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners. Give a little bit about your background and what led you to become SVP of Data and Analytics at Ampersand and what Ampersand is doing today.
Sure. I'm Justin Rosen. I lead the data team here at Ampersand. Ampersand is a media and data platform and ad sales company that is an LLC owned by the largest MVPDs in the United States, Comcast, Charter, and Cox. My team is responsible for essentially bringing the data assets in our platform to life. We sit on an ability to reach 118 million households with media and a 63 million household data footprint, and we bring those two together in a way that bring each of them to life better, generating insights on how consumers are interacting with TV content across screens and across inventory, and figuring out how to use those insights to reach them more efficiently, more effectively, and continue to optimize for success as you learn after each campaign runs.
Awesome. Yeah. So TV data is super interesting. We love talking about TV data. We've worked in the space a lot as well. And I think it would be great to sort of, and maybe we could just jump right into one of the first topic, because the first topic is actually pretty interesting when you're talking about TV data and tackling media fragmentation. So I'd love for you to sort of jump into this topic, share it with our listeners, and tell us a little bit about some of the challenges there.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone who works with me knows that fragmentation is probably the word I say the most often, because I think it's the number one challenge for really any marketer today, but especially marketers in TV. TV, however you define it, is still the most effective vehicle at reaching a lot of consumers quickly with high value messaging in a really high value environment. The challenge is that there's now more avenues to do that. There are different platforms, devices, inventory pools, methods of buying. So it's become a little bit more bewildering to get the value out of an entirety of TV investment, inclusive of multi-screen, streaming, CTV, all of it, because it's hard to see the bigger picture of everything that you're doing in what you would call a TV investment. So we think that we're equipped to help with that here at Ampersand, because by our name, we're all about bringing data together, inventory together, making it simpler, making it more consistent, and continuing to have the largest scale possible. So the challenge is difficult, but we think it's one that can be navigated if you're thoughtful about it.
Yeah, you hinted in the green room before we went live about a little bit of stories that you have with respect to interoperability, and I think that when we're talking about these challenges in the fragmentation of data in TV, I think interoperability comes into play. I'd love to hear any stories that you have to share there.
Yeah, interoperability, I think, is something that we see a lot of demand for from our agency and brand clients. There's a lot of reasons for that. One of them that I think ties to what we're talking about is it is a feature that they feel will help them bring those assets back together and be able to tell a more holistic story, right? Today, you want to talk about walled gardens, or you want to just talk about data sets that are difficult by design, by nature of the data to physically commingle and bring together consistently. If you don't have some openness for that to happen, you're just keeping a barrier up indefinitely and forcing individual investments to be looked at in a silo. And that may be okay for an individual for that investment, but it's going to be really hard to understand whether you're reaching your entire audience or driving a business outcome in a way that's meaningful.
So how does Ampersand tackle the challenge of going beyond the TV screen?
So yeah, I think, even just on the TV screen, there's a ton of fragmentation there. We call it a total TV mindset. So the data that we have access to in our 63 million household data footprint, which we feed through match agents, so everything is de-identified and fits with all privacy regulation. We know how consumers are viewing ads that we run, which could be in the 2 minutes an hour that the MVPDs have access to in the traditional viewing experience, as well as on demand and in-app streaming environments. We can put all of those together to look at how all of our inventory is reaching consumers by each of those screens and by each of those tactics. But even better, we can also examine how viewers are interacting with ad campaigns that we didn't run. The everyday campaigns that they're running with the national networks themselves, or with the local broadcasters at a DMA level. So between national television, local television, addressable television, and streaming television, we can look at that holistically, consistently, and across every disparate MVPD data footprint. They each represent a different geography with negligible overlap. So we can start to bring that back together in a way that gives our marketing clients much more of a complete view of what they're doing.
What happens when I record something, I watch on my DVR and I fast forward the ads?
Well, it depends on what you're trying to measure. If you fast forward the ad, I would say the ad wasn't seen. So if you're looking at an ad delivery analysis, that simply wouldn't be included. But to be able to run insights of how often that happens or when it happens, again, those are insights that can be generated and help you tell that fuller story. I think in a world where you're moving from to a streaming first world, that will probably decrease as an issue as well because of the nature of how the ads are served.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'll jump in there. It all does make sense, but I wanted to kind of transition us into the second topic on addressable TV, driving incrementality with holistic strategies. So what comes to mind for you with holistic strategies? I'm curious.
So that, to me, when I say holistic strategy, it means if you're trying to, if you now have an ability to look across all of your investments, okay, that's a great insight to have. But what that does is it lets you better use your marketing budget across all of the marketing channels that are at your disposal from there. So to have a holistic strategy about how to best distribute that money across different marketing channels. When I got to the company, it was still in the earlier days of addressable TV. And one of the things that I got here to do was to put together a household addressable TV portfolio of inventory and capabilities that would be consistent across as many homes as possible. And in doing that, you now can implement a campaign on the TV screen across multiple pools of inventory that will reach your key audience and only that key audience. So initially, the way that typically came to life in the earliest days was for digital marketers that were very used to targeted video, pushing those same audiences into now an addressable TV program. But what we're now starting to see is you can even be a little bit more broad in how you define your target audience in a way that is uniquely designed to maximize the number of homes that you're reaching. And what I mean by that is we can simply segment our audiences by how frequently they watch TV overall. Are they the heaviest viewer? Are they the lightest viewer? Or are they somewhere in the middle? And when you do that, you'll see that so much TV viewing is happening by that heaviest cohort that when you're running a campaign that is not reaching enough of your audience, more often than not, most of who you missed are only, moderate to low viewers of TV overall. But if you can create an audience segment that is just those homes and a campaign that is designed only to reach those homes, you are much more likely to drive additional reach, incremental reach to the audience that's most important to you.
Interesting. So we've worked with a number of companies in the TV space as well. And one of the ways that we work with them is to drive additional incrementality off of the TV screen, simply because sometimes an audience can be difficult to reach on the TV screen, just like you described. Maybe they're a low volume TV viewer. Are you currently doing that with anyone as well,
right.
where you're able to take that audience and say, hey, this is an audience where my clients are trying to reach, we want to reach them in another medium, digital.
Sure. Great question. There's technically a fourth cohort that we can generate as a reachable segment using our data footprint. So yes, are you a heavy viewer, light viewer, in the middle? But you may be a non-viewer of TV who is a broadband subscriber of one of our MVPD owners or affiliates. And that too becomes a targetable audience that you can push into inventory that we can acquire that may be served elsewhere. And that's the hardest audience to reach at all. And because we can match deterministically in a privacy compliant manner to that incredibly hard to reach audience, we can say with much more certainty that we have a shot to reach them by acquiring inventory elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. That's good stuff. And
again, then you can tie all that back together on the back end and see how all those audiences interact and how that's part of like I said, like a total TV delivery story. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's cool. That's good stuff. And something, that like I said, that we've worked with other companies on. So I'd love to talk to you offline sometime about that as well.
Definitely. I would love to hear from the audience, which, by the way, if you're tuning in and you have any thoughts on addressability or interoperability, such a hard word, but any of the things that we're talking about, we want to hear from you. Like, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? That's okay. Put it in the comments, ask your questions. We'd love to make this interactive, but until then, I don't want to go into the third topic too soon, which is data scale, key to accurate insights. But I guess
I just wanted to chime in, Justin. Let's dig a little deeper. I mean, we're I think the conversation's been very much on the surface about driving incrementality. Talk to us a little bit deeper about how, the amount of data in order to track.
Yeah, and I'll give
viewership and
totally.
I can't even imagine the volumes of data that we're dealing with there.
It took years for us to first set that up, right? We have to bring in the IDs associated with the subscriber footprint, all of the viewing data, all of the ad exposure, MVPD by MVPD, which may all look different, right? We're trying to unify, harmonize that, make it consistent. It was an immense challenge. And then once you've done that, now you have this ocean of data and insights that you can, bring to bear. And that can be also very overwhelming. So you want to try to do it with a little bit of a hypothesis in mind, and especially with a ton of client interaction and feedback. It's one thing for me to think something is important, but I'm not the business owner of the brand or product being marketed. So they will know a lot better than me what's missing for them or what they need to accomplish. But I'll give you an example of how that comes to life. Before you even get to ad exposure to ad inventory that we sell, we can see that the typical national TV campaign in a traditional environment tends to start maxing out after around 6 weeks. So 6 weeks in, you'll have built a ton of reach very quickly. But after that 6th week, you start to see it flatten. And it's flattening earlier than it used to, and it is a lower magnitude than it used to be. But because we can now find addressably, uniquely, just those that are the hardest to reach, you can bend that overall curve to keep it growing sooner, or stop it from growing but before it otherwise would have. And we've seen that typically we can drive, anywhere between 10 and 15 incremental reach points by specifically targeting the hardest to reach homes. And you can do that just by shifting a little bit of your traditional investment into an addressable investment. Somewhere around 5 to 10% will accomplish that. Whereas if you kept it where it was, you'll max out more quickly than you used to, with a higher degree of frequency into these homes that are being reached over and over again. Again, within any individual environment, that's a dynamic that you're starting to see a lot, is that frequency starts to be higher in any individual streamer's platform or an individual tactic. But if you can look more holistically, you can start to spread that frequency better, bring reach, find incremental reach more efficiently, more consistently. So I think those are some of the ways that we've advised marketers that on how to take advantage of all that data, and they tend to be excited about it.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by just the sheer volume of the data, because like the TV viewership data we have, when I look at, like, most people don't realize when you're looking at that, you're talking about 63 million homes. So that's a lot. You're talking about thousands of programs, literally when you look at the programming guide, there's thousands of programs. And then if you're looking at, ad spots, now you're talking about, I can't even imagine the millions of ad spots. So going across thousands of programs in 63 million homes.
And one of the things we've learned, let alone, how about the fact too, that there's all sorts of different audience data attributes that you can append to this, as well as outcome data that you can append to this. I know we'll get to that in a minute, but one of the things that we've learned is to focus on what it is best. And we at Ampersand, we really know TV insights, TV viewing data, and addressable TV. We don't know the creative identification for national spots running everywhere, but there's a lot of partners in the industry that do, just as one example. So we can partner with them who can help us generate that consistent national measurement of what is happening elsewhere in the market, that we can then bring in to the measurement that we know best for inventory that we've sold. And do that with methodology using the TV insights that's rock solid and, like I said, consistent.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think I accidentally encroached on our third topic. Now that I look at it, it says data scale, because the scale itself is amazing to me. It's always intriguing to me. We're used to dealing with scale on the identity side, but to me it's different, because the identity data, we're looking at a number of different pieces of data at scale. But the volume of different programming and ad spots that you guys look at is always amazing to me.
Yeah, look, if we're shifting to data scale, I that's another one that is a big hobby horse of mine, that I think is really, really important for two reasons. The first is you start to add up all these different types of insights that you can generate. All of these attributes that you can pull into this, large database that we're talking about: viewing insights, ad exposure, audiences of all different stripes and shapes and sizes, outcome data. Did product purchase, website visitation, you name it. Geography is another really, really critical way that we have to segment our inventory and reach consumers. But as you start to layer all those in, particularly when you start to tie outcomes to this, you may be surprised at how quickly some of that starts to break down if you're really looking to slice and dice. So the way to solve that is to have a really large starting sample. And even in a world of big data, as you start to build, apply it in the way that we're talking about, that sample, it needs to be fairly large, because that fragmentation across everything you can watch against an audience with this purchase behavior, just in this DMA, that will start to degrade. We with the 63 million households that of data that we can generate insights against, it is rare that we come up on, sort of minimum sizes that you just can no longer generate an insight. We typically have a pretty robust sample and can really get consultative with brands and agencies about how to do exactly what they're looking for their key audience in the unique way that they prefer. So I think that's one of the really big reasons why data scale is so important.
Yeah. Are you using, this comes up at pretty much every podcast now since AI is top of mind for everybody. Are you using any AI today to do any of this analysis?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we'll run machine learning models to help, simulate how our addressable TV portfolio can better reach households or drive that incremental reach. We can do that in advance and predict it. We can show it on the back end. It's only as good as the data that goes into it, though. Like, one thing I say about AI is, I won't profess to be the biggest expert in the world, but it is only as good as the data that it is learning off of. So, that in a way that leads to the second thing that I think is really important about data scale, which is the accuracy of what you're doing. And, one thing that I hear a lot, or that I see a lot, is that the signals in a digital only world, especially with continued uncertainty around cookies and all of the noise we hear there as consumer privacy regulations evolve, that the signals in a digital only world are starting to break down. The utility of IP address is in question. I think even email address is not the best signal. But when we can match in a privacy compliant manner to the MVPD subscriber footprint, where you have a name and address file that changes very infrequently, when it does, they fix it. Or, when someone moves, it's one of the first things they sign up for. Mm-hmm. And they're the originator of the IP address. And you can match against it through trusted third parties that have customer privacy at their core. You've got a really high fidelity on that match, and that it will be that way for an offline-based match and an online-based match, and you can cross the two. And I think that's so important, because I think that's the way that you ensure that you're reaching who it is you actually want to reach, mm-hmm. and that the quality of your audience targeting remains very high. I think that there's an assumption that, this is the audience I always use. This is who that I work with. That's out there. That's data that I can buy in the market, and therefore I'm going to get who I think I am. But I don't know that that's always the case when you're matching on whether you're either modeling or matching on less reliable signals.
Yeah, and that's my experience digitally. It changes so frequently that there's no such thing. An identity graph is essentially a moving object. You know what I mean? It's constantly changing. People used to have this idea that they could just license somebody's identity graph. Now they have it. Well, no, right. It's right. Changed by the time you've downloaded it.
I totally agree. And again, there's value to identity graphs and to modeling and all that, huge value to it. But I think you've got to know its limitations. Mm-hmm. One of the other things we see a lot, one of the great things about working in addressable television is that advertisers love using their own internal first-party data to build audiences, measure outcomes, or both. And they want to use that data as one of their most valuable assets, and they should, because it is one. And they're fairly relentless about it. They're building out these incredibly savvy analytics teams to measure success, to optimize for the future, to determine who the right audiences are to target. If you start breaking down the accuracy of how they're even working with those, you're going to threaten the success of going about that strategy in the first place. And what I fear is that it's still a little bit difficult, more difficult than I would like, to do that consistently with every provider that's out there. I think we can help with that, but it is a challenge. So that some are just saying, well, if it's easier to just do it this other way, I'll do that, but not realizing the risk to their own business measurement and business evaluation in doing that.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of these data collaboration platforms are trying to overcome that. You know, they're I think that's part of the point of them, is to help overcome that, so that they can match audiences that brands have with audiences that are on certain platforms. But there's
Data
no
collaboration platforms are an area we are spending a lot of time in evaluating and piloting. We're actively piloting with a bunch right now, and I think that we will see more of that adoption. It's a really great model for us because we, by definition, are already bringing a lot of data together. So to then have a secure, transparent environment to do that with partners, with clients, I think that is a really good model to operate on as we move forward in the industry.
100%.
Yeah.
I really love what both of you were saying about, just talking about how identity graphs change. Kind of like, it made me think of the word evolution. I don't know, like your identity graph is constantly evolving. And I'm just curious, David, I've never heard you talk about that. Could you just take a quick minute and talk to the audience about how your identity graph is constantly changing?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything changes, right? I mean, people change their email address, people change their IP addresses are changing. They lose their cookies, mobile device IDs, they change as well. All of this, and because of that, you can't have an identity graph and think that it's valid without changing with it. And so it's something that whoever is providing this identity solution to a platform, to a brand, to whatever, it has to be, it's this living creature is the way I think of it. It's constantly changing. And if it's a day old, then you've lost 1%. If it's 30 days old, maybe you lost 30% of that. And so you have to be subscribing to an identity solution that is constantly updating, evolving, identifying fraudulent IDs, identifying bad linkages between IDs, and keeping track of people moving, people changing jobs, and therefore their email changes. People get a new phone, a new device, a new computer. It happens constantly. And so that's something that, an identity graph basically has to change constantly in order to keep up. And that in order to do that, you're talking about analyzing trillions and trillions of data signals a month, like we do at BDEX, in order to be able to constantly identify those changes.
I love that. We haven't really talked about that. And it's just interesting. I mean, it's so obvious, right? But I feel like us lazy marketers, sometimes we like to just set it and forget it, but we're not in a place anymore where we can set it and forget it. It's constantly changing. And I didn't even think about IP addresses, like you mentioned. But we did get a little shout out.
A lot of people are building audiences off of data from their CRM or whatever it is. And that data, unless you're updating it, it's growing old by the minute, right? And so those, whether you're talking about names and addresses of your customers, those addresses are changing. People move, 20% people move every year. So those are changing. IP addresses, those are changing constantly. Emails are changing. All of that is changing. So unless you're updating that, you're building audiences off of errant data.
And you've got to combine that. You really have to look at it on, two axes. You've got to combine the frequency with which any individual signal is turning over with the reliability of using it to match to, other data sets so that you can activate on it or use it in a privacy compliant way. And that's that intersection is really important. And to your point, Jesse, I would stress you don't want just good enough, because if it's good enough, it may actually not be, right? You want to have that as reliable as possible.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to learn how you all measure, what you were talking about earlier, like people in the household who do watch a lot of TV and the people in households who don't measure a lot of TV, because sometimes in life you go through phases where you watch a lot of TV and then you don't watch a lot of TV. So at what point do you fall into what bucket? It's just so interesting. But yeah, we did get a shout out from Travis about data. And he says data collaboration for the win. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about data collaboration. Were we talking about to the guest who came on from Lodame about data collaboration a little bit too, and how brands are collaborating with data and they're getting such more rich insights. I think her example was Johnny Walker in like a beer brand. I can't remember what it was, and how they were able to learn just from their interactions from data collaborations. But I think Travis is right. And it's an interesting topic to bring up here. And we got a little thumbs up from Benjamin. So Benjamin,
if I circle it back to the top, right, I talked about how fragmentation I think is the biggest challenge. A way to solve that is for different data owners to collaborate together so that they can lift everybody's boat. It's in all marketers' interest for there to be a more consistent measurement approach across as much inventory and as much as many platforms as possible. If I were them, that's one thing that I would want. And as someone who believes in the power of TV on the big screen as driving brands and driving brand health, driving outcomes, it's in the TV industry's interest to do the same, because if you remain fragmented in these silos or across screens and audiences and data pools, it's going to be that much harder for marketers to understand that story and agree.
Yep, absolutely. Good point.
Definitely. What would you say on data collaboration, David?
Yeah, I back up everything Justin said. I mean, it's, the more collaboration that goes on between the data providers and brands and platforms, the better the targeting gets, right? And the better the targeting gets, the better the outcome, the better the performance. I personally, I've talked about this for years about how important it is for me as a consumer that I want ads that are related to what is, what I'm interested in. The more McDonald's ads I see, the less value either of us gets. McDonald's isn't going to get me as a customer. It's not going to happen. So, they're losing money trying to reach me, and I'm losing interest. So I think that, when I see an ad that's relevant to what I'm doing, that's where the value is at. And the more we can get there with more addressability, more data collaboration, all of that improves. The outcome is better for the consumer. And when the outcome is better for the consumer, it's also better for the brands.
And, look, ultimately, it's too effective to not be there. When brands get large enough, penetrated enough, it continues to be the best vehicle for them to continue to grow. Brands that for years swore off that they would never be on TV, Starbucks, Chipotle, are now two of the largest TV advertisers, right? Mm-hmm. I would be willing to make a bet that in the long run, Tesla will be next on that list. Maybe not next year, but eventually, if you've got a brand perception issue, or you have a need to begin driving more product soon, it's hard to find a vehicle like TV on the big glass to do that quickly, efficiently, at scale, and across all elements of the marketing funnel.
Yeah, that's right.
Such a great point, and you summarized that so well. Well, I think we've gotten through all three topics. I mean, we did it a little all over the place, but we have to make sure we get to our fourth topic, Justin. But before we do, I'll just ask, is there anything else you would like to add on any of these three topics we've gone over?
I think we hit it.
I think we did too.
Yeah.
So our fourth topic, let me see what comment just came in. We've got something from Travis. He says, Jesse, we have been seeing quite a few, and he's referring to data collaborations from the comments, but some common ones we chat on, and we got a colon, so I think we'll rating, so I'll bring those back in when he comments with those, Travis. But until then, we want to know, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack, Justin?
The biggest one for me and my team here is Smartsheet. We are such a heavy relier on that platform. What we do is very complex, and we have a lot of partners to work with. So to have things transparent, at our fingertips, constantly logged, collaborative, it just keeps everybody's trains running on time in a world where even one missed detail can be a big mountain to overcome. If you're familiar with the GIF of people running around screaming, where that's basically what happens if we ever have a brief outage in our smart sheet license. It's an incredibly simple but demonstrably effective tool, must have for me and my team.
Yeah, I've never used it, but I believe I've heard of it before. That's where you can take a large database and basically make it look as easy as a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah,
That's
and have it be collaborative among different teams and enterprises.
Cool. Yeah.
I would also call out, there's a cool one, a browser extension called Scribe that my team introduced me to, which is a great one to come up with sort of how-tos and documentation of complex processes. Again, by definition, what we do is really complex. And I thought that was a really quick, concise, and very easy way to document some of the things that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Cool.
Did you say their name was Scribe?
Scribe.
Yes,
yeah.
Scribe.
Okay, yeah. SCRIBE.
That's it.
Yeah. Got it. I
actually have a window open on my computer with Scribe because somebody mentioned it to me also, and I just haven't looked into it yet, but it's still open in my browser.
There you go.
Nice. Well, we're still waiting for Travis. If you had any more thoughts on any data collaboration examples you wanted to share, let us know. But until then, I think we have just one quick minute, Justin, for a post-topic question. So we're wondering if you could go back to when you first came into, let's say, the data industry, the TV industry, maybe advertising industry, what is the number one piece of advice you would give yourself?
I think it would be to trust your instincts, and when you feel like you're getting the hang of something or getting good at something, to put your foot on the gas. I always wanted to be in TV in some way. That's just the world that I wanted to work in. And I found my way there with a couple of different roles. And after finding my way into addressable TV, that started to click for me a little bit. And it became like, yeah, I think I'm onto something here. So to believe that, yeah, my instinct to have gone in that direction was the right one, and really push to keep moving down a path that you think is headed the right way, not to question yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yep. Just got to trust your gut, trust your intuition. Such a good point. Thank you so much, Justin. It's really been great having you on the show. But before we go, Justin, in closing, would you like to tell the listeners how they could find you after the show if they wanted to reach out?
Grab me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest. I'm easily findable and pretty responsive. Happy to connect.
That sounds great.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you joining us on the show today, Justin. This has been great. I think we got some great insights on data and TV, and a lot of compelling information for our listeners. And I'm going to let Jesse close this out for us then.
All right. And I will do just that. Let me start by putting up a QR code right here. So if you're watching, you can scan the QR code. But if you're listening to this later on podcast, just go to bdex.com. But we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. We want to help you build authentic connections with your audience that drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audience, and an audience that, actually truly resonates with your brand, ensuring your marketing is hitting the mark every time. So we want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button, and we'll be glad to guide you. Also, for anyone interested in coming on the show, or if you know someone who would be a great guest, please send their information to us at info@bdex.com. Share your qualitative data with us so we can make the show better for you. And thanks again, Justin, for joining us.
No problem. Happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. See you later. Bye-bye.
Right.